Alrighty, so Monday morning. It is getting into the year, isn't it? It's like we can't really call it the new year anymore. We're getting close to summertime. I had an opportunity actually to walk with my wife yesterday in the nice kind of summery, springish breeze and see a lot of the flowers blooming everywhere and just kind of took my time to enjoy nature yesterday. It was nice. We sat in the grass for a little while. That was enjoyable. And, it's important to always take some time to decompress all of that functionality that you have, because there's a lot to that, because I'll tell you, your body will make you do it anyways. It'll shut you down with sickness, depression. I could name a number of the ailments per se that come to the human being that doesn't allow themselves that time to let that saturation of your environment and of nature and the people that you love kind of take precedence over anything else that you're focused on, because it's nourishing. You have to nourish your psychology as much as you have to nourish your body. All right, so let's remember that. But it is Monday, and so what we want to remember today is that the game is on. It is time to get out there and do something incredible. There's a part of yourself, all right, and all of you know what I'm talking about here. There's a part of yourself that's consistently desirous of progress. And as Tony Robbins talks about, what happiness really is that experience of growth, of that progress in your life. Well, there's a part of yourself, and in fact, Carl Jung called it the self to a degree, that is more consistent, more capable, more desirous, more focused on that growth. So you can say that part of yourself literally is attempting at all times to unflower like a flower that blooms in the sunlight and grow. And the more you allow that part of yourself to take precedence, to be within your perspective and to operate from it, the more you're going to be able to do things like control your conscious thoughts that have this negative connotation at times, that where your insecurities come in, where your lack of self-esteem comes in. So operate from that self that is working to grow, that has that growth, that progress as its portion of mentality, right? So Morning Mindset, brought to you by Beto Paredes. You can learn more about me at betoparedes.com. Thank you for joining me here. Thank you for deciding that today is going to matter to you, that you're going to get your mindset right. You're going to do something powerful with your day. And of course, if you would like to join us and you're listening to this recording, you can join us anytime by going to tinyurl.com/MMS today. We do this every day at every weekday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and at 10 a.m. Eastern. So let's get into our subject. Well, maybe if I get some cooperation again, there we go. Okay, so let's get into our subject today. What is the subject of the day? Before we coin the entire thing up, I'd like to start with certain perspective. If any of you are in a communications job, whether that be sales, networking, or maybe you have a large number of projects that you have to deal with on a consistent basis, and there's a lot of people that you have to deal with, well, you've got to have some tools in order to be able to focus primarily on what is most important at any given time. All right. The difference between someone who executes and does well in a given day and someone who does all right is that the one that does well in a given day is able to almost create a compendium of what will happen that day. What are the things you need to accomplish? What are your outcomes for the day? So that they can focus primarily section by section on the things that they know they need to look at and do specifically at the time of the present moment. Understanding what to do with your present moment, exactly what you should be doing at this moment in general, is very important. All right, for example, most of the time, people allow a flood of ideas, a flood of thoughts to go through their minds, especially if they're like, for example, getting into a network marketing business and just learning a lot about how the business operates. There's things that fly around your mind consistently, and that's product information, trying to remember people's names that were in the upline, figuring out your schedule and when you can actually participate in the events that the company has, thinking through the process of how and when you plan to work your business. We could just start going on and on and on and on into this big list. The problem is that most people don't make that list. Okay? Strategic planning is critical to the advancement of your career. It doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. You've got to understand that you've got to act with strategy. All right, you've got to have direction in the things that you're trying to accomplish. All right, there's many professionals out there in this industry as far as personal development is concerned, and I take from so many of them, so many that I love so much. You know, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins. I would even say Jack Canfield, someone that I've, at least in the past, have really enjoyed. Jack Zufelt, one of my favorites as well. And I want to give you something from Jack that I think is pretty valuable. Okay. A lot of people talk about goal setting. So there's all these things that you want to do. Write them all down, these goals that you have. A lot of times that can be useful. As a matter of fact, me and my wife at the beginning of the year followed the Brian Tracy model, and we wrote down 100 things that we wanted to accomplish. I still find that that was valuable. But in Jack Zufeld's thinking model, he talks about being in a position of understanding your core desires and then creating direction, strategy around getting those things accomplished. So strategically, you've got more important things to figure out in the strategy of your current position in the moment that you're working on, the day of the week, of the month, of the year that you're in. So you can map out your activities and plans even into the weeks and months ahead. But it's not a goal. It has to be strategic. It's a strategy. Okay, strategies are based on things that you are going to do, not things that you are thinking that would be good to do, but things that you absolutely plan to do, period. Why? Because it's strategically focused on the things that you personally are trying to accomplish. Yes, that may be something that you discovered through goal setting, but that strategy is critical, and is so critical. One thing I like about Tony Robbins' perspective, he talks about how the RAM in your brain, right, that random access memory of your brain has to be clear in order to functionally understand and do the things that you're working on specifically at a given moment. So he talks about, he even takes his hand and puts it on top of his head and he says, you got to capture. You got to capture the ideas that you have, write them down, put them somewhere. Okay, put them somewhere centrally so that you can come back to them and figure out how those fit into your strategic plan of action. Okay, so what makes the difference, again, before we jump into this subject, between someone who is very successful during the day and someone who is fairly successful, and even those that are unsuccessful? I brought all of these things to surface, talked about them in generality, because being a human being can be complicated. I'm just talking strategically about work. What about your relationship to your son, your parents? What, like, for example, my parents, I think about them often. I strategically figure out where and when I can actually think more deeply about the relationship I have with them. They're getting older. I used to live in the same town as they do. Now I don't. Okay, I'm still close, but most of the things I do now have to be communicated over phone and email, Facebook. I need a strategy for keeping that tight, but I can't necessarily allow that particular strategy to be the most important thing right at this moment. I'm at work. What is most important to me right this moment are the people that are on this call. That's my current focus and strategy, is how do I deliver a message to you that has value? I may have a million things to do, and if any of you know me very well, I've got a number of joint ventures. I'm the CEO of a company. I've got many clients, many customers. I have an encumbrance in my business model that is very intense. But the truth is, I will not be very effective without a strong strategic plan of what to do with the activities that I am doing here today. Now, you may not always know what those are. Let me tell you something that's kind of fun. You get done with your work day, or let's just say it's Friday. You move through your weekend, you come up with a few different ideas, you're calm with your family, suddenly something comes to you. How many of you ever experienced that? You try to figure something out, figure it out, finally you're like, man, I'm not going to even try anymore. 6, 7 hours later, all of a sudden it just comes to you in this big vision, right? Because your mind, your total mind, your unconscious, subconscious, and consciousness works in tandem and together, usually better when you're not trying to keep it consciously focused, because really your conscious mind's only responsible for 10% of your processing. Well, Monday comes, your strategy's a little bit different, because even though you ended your day on Friday, Monday's a little bit different than Friday was. Because you had an aha. Something of high value came to you when you were in the calm of sitting, playing with your daughter, whatever it may be. And now your strategy is a little bit different. So you've got to learn how to organize quickly at the beginning of your day. Because one thing I can tell you is from the time the buzzer rings until it rings again in the day that you're working, most likely you have very little necessity to change the strategy of that day. And I'm not saying that it won't happen. You always have to stay flexible, nimble. You got to keep the precision of your activity solid. You may have to make adjustments, moves. There might be a big sale that comes in, and you may have to change 3 appointments because you know this one's worth X amount of money. Okay, you have to be flexible, but you need to have a strong strategy specifically for that day. What are you going to do with your time? What are you going to do as soon as I get off this mindset? What are you going to do in the next 2 hours specifically? Okay, now we're going to talk about the subject now. You can change your view in 20 seconds. I didn't say you can change your strategy. That's why I wanted to make sure you understood that. The view, your perspective, your focus of what you're planning to take action on needs emotional, foundational perspective. It needs focus, unity, one-pointedness. Okay? So if you are sitting down to tackle that first piece of strategic action that you believe is the right thing to do first today, and for whatever reason, the 900 other things that are goals, desires, fears, emotions, other parts of your strategy start coming in, start flooding into your mind, especially when you have a certain preference. We were listening to Tony Robbins this morning, and he talked about how people tend to spend time on things they prefer or they feel they're good at, they're happy with, they put more time into it as opposed to dealing with the things that make them unhappy. So a lot of times it can be hard to focus strategically on the one thing that you knew needed to be done and be specific to that time. So if your mind is getting flooded with all of this other perspective and you know that you are a point of action right at this moment where you've got to do something specific in order to be successful, okay, right this minute, then you can use this. It's worked for me. I've used it forever. Okay. If you have the wrong mindset, stop everything you are doing for 20 seconds. Stand up and get some blood moving in your system. Why is this so critical? What does our brain require? Well, there's a lot of things. Nutrition, right? Energy. I'm actually living in ketosis, so the majority of my brain energy comes from ketones. It's an interesting subject to look into. It needs blood. You got to get your blood moving, get your heart pumping. Stand up and shake your hands out, shake your legs out. Don't sit there and just try to strain your brain. Don't be like, change, focus. Get up. Get some energy going through your body. Loosen up. Shake your legs out. Shake your hands out. Spin your head around a little bit. You know, jump up and down. I actually jump up and down usually right before I start a mindset. I just did jump up and down. Okay? Stand up. Get some blood through your system. Then write down what you really need to focus on in the next 2 hours. Even if you already have some strategy somewhere, that says what it is that you're supposed to be doing right now. Get a blank piece of paper and write down exactly what you're supposed to be doing right now and look at it. Read it. Get it in your mind. Make sure you read it out loud. Get it specific and focused. Jumping up and down, moving your hands around, look at it. Okay, so then write down what you really need to focus on in the next few hours, not the whole day. And purposely tighten it up to something you have to do quickly. Okay, even if you're planning to work the whole day, what can you do right now? What can you take massive action on right now? If you have a 2-hour plan, how do you ramp that into the next 20 minutes? How do you get real focused on focusing in on that velocity in that first part of it, right? What's the difference between someone who wins a 100-meter dash and someone who gets second place? It's that explosive start. It's how they come out of the barracks. It's how hard they push in that first couple of seconds that determines the majority of who actually wins that race. Now, not a 400-meter. I'm talking about that dash. Figure out what you can do out of that 2-hour strategy quickly and get in it. Because when you have velocity and you're taking action, your whole physiology gets involved. You feel it in your heart, in your stomach, in your arms, in your legs, in your head. You're moving. Okay, that's called massive action. It's physiologically and psychologically tied together. It's linked. They link and you'll feel it. You'll feel that energy. Okay, now this is important. This will help you. Take several deep breaths and hold your breath for 20 seconds, and as soon as you come out of it, go hard. You know your 2-hour strategy. You know what you're going to do first. Take some deep breaths. Take a deep breath in and hold your breath. You know what that does? That actually, for a moment, starves your brain of oxygen. And what that does is it clears your consciousness. Okay? Any of you that do yoga, which I do pretty consistently, if you know what pranayama is. Okay, pranayama, you use the fire breath. You actually put your hands down on your lower abdomen and breathe into your lower abdomen quickly. It's kind of hilarious the first time you do it, or if you ever see somebody do it and you haven't seen it before. But that's what I do. I'll flood my system with oxygen, and then I'll hold my breath. And from that perspective, when I come out of it, my consciousness is clear. And if you look at what you wrote on that one piece of paper, you know what you need to do now, then you just do it. Okay? You need mechanisms to help you through your process. If you have a hard time concentrating, if that seems to be a difficulty for you, do something that is mechanical that will help you break that perspective and get into the habit of doing it consistently so that you can break it. Because let me tell you something, there are a million things going through everyone's head all the time. Okay, there are so many things, even for the average person, even for the person that's not even an entrepreneur, that's consistently flooding their consciousness. If you get good at this one exercise, this one practice, the amount of things that you can do, that self that is you, that has that consistency for growth, that desire for progress, will take more precedence in your personality. It's a cleansing of that part of your personality that wants to be varied and radical, really, and not focused, because there's a part of us that's consistently trying to break out of that perspective of staying concentrated. Why is it there? How does it operate? What's its function? It's got a natural function as part of you. But that self that you are, that is consistent, solid, progressive, self-esteemed, that part of yourself is a real part of who you are, and you need to let that take over more and more of what you're doing in life. One of the ways you do that is getting some mechanics around controlling your actions, because execution is what matters, not just ideas. Ideas are great, but if you cannot execute those ideas, they're almost worthless. Execution should be the main focus of your daily activities. What is your strategy? How are you going to execute it? So Monday, let's have a good week. Let's have a solid week. Let's do some amazing things. I am very stoked myself. I've got a lot going on, and I am very grateful for those of you that come on here every day and join me. Take 10 minutes, take a pen, notebook, write down some things that you learned today. Maybe write down what you plan to do in the next 2 hours. And then right beneath that, what you plan to explode into in the next 15 minutes. And let's make this day count. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again tomorrow morning.